Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I have got no rhythm. And today I'm going to do a recent reads. This is probably not going to go on Friday, so I'm not going to call it Friday Reads. But I'll take you through everything I've read recently, and then I've also got a couple of mini book hauls that I've done, which will give us a preview of what I'll be reading in December. So I've just recorded my review of Cormac McCarthy's The Passenger, which I did as a sort of review of that book, and then the other Cormac McCarthy's I'd read previous to that. So that's what I was reading after I finished The Passenger. This is where I'm at. Here are all the books that I've read since then and where I'm reading what I'm reading right now. So after that, I read The Death of Captain America. This is actually volume 2 of The Death of Captain America, but this is the first one that I picked up. Must have picked up cheap. This is Ed Brubaker did a whole run on Captain America in the early aughts, starting with The Winter Soldier, which I'll talk about in a second, which then became the basis for the whole Winter Soldier plotline that was used in the second or third Captain America movie, and old Bucky Barnes's trajectory through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was all based on the work that Brubaker did, and I think he's thanked usually in the credits of those movies. So this was after the Winter Soldier, after Civil War. Then you had this in the Civil War, it's Captain America's on the bad side, on the losing side, because he refuses to register, and then at the end of Civil War he is captured and taken into custody, and spoilers, this whole series is called The Death of Captain America. Spoilers, he is shot and assassinated, and this is the second one. So in the first volume you actually see him being shot and killed. Don't worry, nobody stays dead in comic books except for Bucky. Nobody stays dead in comic books, but this was the second volume in that series. So this is from that Captain America run that Ed Brubaker did. This is issues 31 to 36. So I thought that I had been dipping in and out of comics, mostly reading online at this point when this came out. And the reality is, when I read this, I realized I hadn't read any of these before. I sort of knew what was happening. I knew what was going on, but I hadn't actually stayed up to date with these at all. This is a pretty terrific run. So this is, written by Ed Brubaker, who's a comic book writer that I've been following for a while and have gone deep into as a result of really enjoying this particular collection. Art by Steve Epting, who I don't really know, but it's a beautiful painted. I'm guessing this is not painted, actually painted. This is all computer painted, but really sort of interesting look to it, and muted colours. There's Bucky's arm getting into a fight with somebody, and quite good sort of. The story is great. Like, people on the right side or on the wrong side of the undercover, can they be trusted? There's a lot of that sort of deep spy stuff which Captain America sort of later played into. So you've got people like Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, and say Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Is he a goodie? Is he a baddie? Can we trust him because he was brainwashed? And there's lots of brainwashing going on in this, which is a classic spy trope, which feels kind of old, but actually I thought handled really well. So I really enjoyed this collection, and it made me want to go back and pick up more of Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America. And I've been reading other Brubaker stuff, and I've got some examples of all that here, so I'll talk about that in a second. But that's what I read. That was a really positive read for me. After that, I went to my second of the year and second ever Percival Everett book, and this is Percival Everett by Virgil Russell is the title of the book, and the author is Percival Everett. And weird metafiction. So my first ever Percival Everett, despite him being on my radar for a couple of years, never having got around to reading him. First one I read was The Trees, which is, I think, probably my book of the year. Just a fantastic, and I saw it won an award recently. I think it won the PG Wodehouse Comedy Award. It was shortlisted for the Booker. Been up for a whole bunch of other things, and good to see it finally get some recognition for a sort of tier 2 literary award, if not one of the majors. So I'd said at the time that I want to read more Percival Everett. This is the second one I've read. Metafiction, writing about writing. Percival Everett is a character in the book who is writing a novel that he wants his son to continue, and Percival Everett is the son, so the book's being written by. It's all a bit weird, and bitty and threads not followed through, but then a long section in the middle which goes sort of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where and also weirdly reminded me of Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club, where an older gentleman, the old man who's been writing the book, is then institutionalized, put into a home with other old people where they are neglected, and they try and gang up on a sort of extended novel within the novel. It didn't wholly work for me, but also did not put me off wanting to read more Percival Everett. So I'm happy that I followed through and read at least a second one this year, and I'm going to read more. I think I've got lined up. I don't have them yet. I'll look out for them when I'm going to. I don't know if I mentioned I'm going to London for holidays, because most of my office shuts down over Christmas. So we're going to go, and I'm going to be there for like 3 weeks. And my wife for 2. I'm staying an extra week to spend with my mum. So maybe I'll pick up another puzzler. I'm looking at Erasure or Telephone. I just watched Mark Nash's review of Dr. No, the recent one, the Post the Trees, which he didn't rate very highly, even though I like the idea I've read the Ian Fleming James Bond books, so I quite like the idea of him writing that kind of spy thriller, even with Percival Everett's twist on it, which I'm not sure I've got a handle on yet after the 2 books, because I think they're quite different. A lot of rambling, wasn't as good as The Trees. Glad I read it. Going to be reading some more Percival Everett. That is Percival Everett by Virgil Russell by Percival Everett. I mean, everything about it is a mouthful. That was that. After that, we did another graphic collection that I had sitting around and wanted to get to. This was Neil Gaiman's 1602, and this is a collection. This was an 8-issue miniseries that Neil Gaiman wrote. Neil Gaiman, famously as a comic book writer, wrote mainly for Marvel and wrote mainly for DC, Sandman, and had written whatever happened to Batman, and a few dabbled in DC Vertigo, Sandman, and which is a DC imprint, and then Marvel hired him to write this weird story, and it's like so back in the day in the early 90s, when they sorted out, or the late 80s when they sorted out DC continuity. There was the Crisis of Infinite Earths, which I've spoken about, and I read that maxi series recently, where they cleared out all the different versions, what we now think of as the multiverse. DC decided to end all that and have one universe. And then they found, well, that limited the number of stories they could tell, so they created this non-canon imprint called Elseworlds. So then they got to tell stories about, what if Batman was around during the time of Jack the Ripper? What if Clark Kent landed in Gotham as a baby and grew up to be the Batman with all the powers of Superman? All those, whatever these, what happened if he landed in Russia and instead of America, and grew up to be, anyway, those were called Elseworlds titles, and they were usually standalone, sometimes miniseries or one-offs, where you got to picture your heroes in another type of world. Now we've come full circle. So the Crisis on Infinite Earths reduced everything from the multiverse down to one universe, and everything is opened back up into the multiverse and all things, and Marvel has embraced the multiverse like no other. And comes along this story, the 1602, which is a set in 1602, and yet we have some very recognizable people. So we have the medic to the court of the Queen is a Dr. Stephen Strange, and the Queen's spy master is Nicholas Fury, and Nicholas Fury has a page boy who is training in his arts, who is a young innocent lad called Peter Parker. And it's that kind of thing. So names that we're familiar with, sometimes powers that we've seen before, superheroes with different things. There's a tale threaded through this of 4 brave souls who travelled on a ship called the Fantastic, who have been lost, and we don't know what happened to them. What will we ever discover what happened to the 4 from the Fantastic, and some other sort of interesting stuff. And Gaiman is writing this, and Gaiman can write the heck out of a comic book. So it just rattles along, and it's entertaining. And how is this, and what is it? And are we supposed to believe that this is like an old sort of DC Elseworlds version of the Marvel universe with all the heroes arrive in 1602? Or is this something else? There's something going on, and he taps in. So Gaiman writes that he only wanted to use Marvel superheroes from that first run in the 60s that Stan Lee did, and Steve Ditko, and maybe Jack Kirby. So we don't get any of the later with the X-Men or other series. We're stuck with the very early ones. So you've got the Fantastic Four. You've got when the X-Men show up, it's only that first iteration of the X-Men in those early in that first run. So Professor Xavier, Marvel Girl, as she was called then, Jean Grey, the Beast, Angel, Iceman. Have I left anyone out? Cyclops, of course. So only those early Stan Lee heroes show up, but he does a number on them. And this was really, again, I thought I'd read some of this. I think I might have read some of the individual issues when they came out or seen them, but I had never read the story from cover to cover. And like the Death of Captain America, this was refreshingly good. I like this. Not everyone loves this, and they've gone on to write more stories set in the 1602 universe, not written by Neil Gaiman. This was his only contribution. These are 8 issues, and I think the story works. I think there's a nice reveal where we get to find out what's really happening and who someone really is. And I went with this completely. This worked for me. Neil Gaiman's Marvel 1602. And after that, I read my third James Baldwin. This is Go Tell It on the Mountain. I previously read The Fire Next Time, and which is non-fiction, and If Beale Street Could Talk, which is a beautiful little novella, but a later work, I think, by Baldwin. This is his first novel, and I think once someone looking at his career in context has written, I got this off Goodreads, that this is the book that James Baldwin needed to write in order to become James Baldwin. In other words, I think we're seeing here a lot of the prototypical Baldwin identities. We have the young, precocious, brilliant mind wrestling with joining the church, also wrestling with his sexuality and finding his place as a black young man in Harlem. The sexuality is with a very light touch here. So I know later we deal much more, I think, with characters who are more openly gay. I think here we've got a young protagonist, and we're seeing the lightest of sense of his awe of an older boy who he's acquainted with, who is also in the church, and but you could go through this without really understanding or knowing that's what Baldwin is getting at. But it's there. It's an undercurrent. It's a beautifully constructed novel. So we start off with our main character, and we're following him along and feeling his guilt and trying to find his place in the world. And then the second part of the book, so it's his place in the family with his mother and his brothers and his stepfather. He's the only child of his mother, and his mother and his stepfather got together and had more children, so he's the oldest. And we break off away from his POV, and then suddenly go into, there's an event that brings everyone to the church, and in the church we get the point of view of his aunt, and the point of view of his stepfather, and the point of view of his mother, each one told in a block, where we get much deeper insight than perhaps we had been expecting. We thought we had a handle on these characters, the hypocritical religious stepfather who prone to violence and from a tough upbringing, and preaches tough love to his sons. The aunt who seems to be on her own, and what has led her to this point in her life where she has no one with her. And the mother, we thought was a sort of stereotypical loving mother, blind to the faults that be around, downtrodden by the husband, blind to the faults of the children, and with these 3 vignettes in the middle section, something like 40-50 pages long each, we get right into the soul of each of those characters and learn that they are flawed, but so much more real and so much more interesting and fleshed out than I thought we were going to get from the first section, which was all about the boy. So really, really strong. I'm happy to continue reading James Baldwin. I'm pleased that I've got. I'm now. I'll try and do some more chronological. I'll do the early works and occasional non-fiction in between. So I think the next one after this may be Giovanni's Room. I don't know if that's the next chronologically. Notes of a Native Son. Is that non-fiction? I need to do my research. Anyway, there's another country I've read the file next time, and then there's a whole bunch of other novels and essay collections. So I'd like to do Giovanni's Room next, but this was great. Go Tell on the Mountain. I picked this up in the Strand bookshop about a year ago, so it's taken me that long to get to it, but well worth it, and I'm pleased I'm doing more. Baldwin, more to come. So that's that out of the way, and after that, so far we've seen Captain America, Percival Everett, Neil Gaiman on Marvels in 1602, James Baldwin. I think it's pretty obvious where I'm going next with this. You can predict my next read. It is, of course, Bono's autobiography, Surrender, which I've started, thoroughly enjoying. I will whiz through that hopefully in the next couple of days, because it looks fun, and I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I like the fact that I can buy something like this and read it, because reading's for pleasure, and that leads me into this other book haul that I've done, all books that I have bought when I have lots of books that I've already bought and haven't read, but this is probably what I'll do before most of those. So in the same vein as Serena, I bought these two books together from Amazon at half price each. From Amazon. I know people don't like Amazon, but I can't beat that. That would have been £25, and I spent £12.50 on that. And then coming out at the same time, Quentin Tarantino's book, Cinema Speculation. This is just him talking about all the movies he loved in the 70s. I love Tarantino. I'll talk more about him when I read this. And other things. Okay, this was literally a cover purchase. I bought this book because I saw the cover and I thought I'd like to have that. I don't know anything about the author, but it's a short book. It shouldn't be a huge time investment. And this book is called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction by Walter Benjamin. And I bought this because I saw this edition. It's in the Little Penguins Great Ideas, which these short little works, they sold them for about £4.99 when they released. This is the spine of the book. And the reason I bought this is because this is the cover. I love that. I fell in love with that. I thought, 100 pages here, give or take, 108, 109 pages. I don't know anything about Walter Benjamin. The title is intriguing, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. I know he's a German cultural critic from 80 years ago odd. I'll read that because look at that. Just look at the cover. You see, there's the spine and the cover. I wish I could put this out, facing out on my bookshelves like that, because that really tickled me. Okay, that's another thing that I bought was, we had the Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which I read, was shortlisted for the book prize. Shortlisted or longlisted? Shortlisted. And loved it. Tiny little book, which fell in love with about a year after everyone else had already fallen in love with it. And knew from then that I wanted to go back, and everyone said you've got to read Foster. So Foster has been republished by Faber. So I bought a copy of that. This is a tiny, tiny novel. I have Foster here, tiny little thing. It's 80 pages long, and the print's enormous. So that I'll probably inhale some point tomorrow afternoon. And while I was already getting Claire Keegan, I also picked up this from, this is a short story from one of her early short story collections. And this is one of these things, well, sold at £4.50. I got this for cheaper than that from Amazon. This may be longer than the novel. This is called The Forester's Daughter. I think originally published in a collection called Walk the Blue Fields, have I got that right? And this is another 60 odd pages, but the writing's a bit smaller than in Foster. Anyway, so I may do these together just because this is supposed to be exquisite, but it's really short. I'm looking forward to it. It's a lot to pay for a short book, but I did it. So a couple of Claire Keegans to get through, and pick this up because this was on the long list for the 2023 Tournament of Books. This was the shortest page count of the 70 odd books in the shortlist. This is called Grown Ups by Marie Aubert. This is translated from the Norwegian by Rosie Hedger, and these are short stories, and the whole thing is 150 pages. Not short, 154 pages, short stories called Grown Ups. Don't know anything about it. I'll do that. Then the next, these are all graphic novels. You can stop watching now if you're not interested. The rest of the haul is all graphic novels based on the Ed Brubaker. That the Death of Captain America that I loved. This is, as I said, this was the issues 31 to 36 of his Captain America series. So I bought this. This is the Winter Soldier Ultimate Collection, and this is issues 1 to 9 and 11 to 14. of the series. This comes a year and a half before the death of Captain America. We start with the Winter Soldier. So this is issues sort of 1 to 14 without issue 10 for some reason. That must have been a standalone or a crossover with something else. So that's Ed Brubaker. And then I've got this. This is the also from the same run. This is issues 22 to 24. So this is the part of the Civil War crossover that crossed over with the Captain America comic as written by Ed Brubaker, and this leads directly into the death of Captain America. So so we have that. Then Brubaker and Matt Fraction together, I bought the complete Iron Man run, the Immortal Iron Man. Sorry, not Iron Man, Iron Fist, I beg your pardon. This is Danny Rand, not Tony Stark. And this is issues 1 to 16 and an annual and a couple of other one-offs. So this is a big, chunky 300-page collection, a whole run of a comic book sold in America for $40, and I picked this up relatively cheaply from eBay, I think. Nice art, and I've never been a particularly big fan of Iron Fist, but I am a fan of both Matt Fraction and Ed Brubaker. David Aja is the artist, and how to pronounce his name. So yeah, looking forward to getting that. Don't know that story at all. More Matt Fraction goodness. This is X-Men Messiah Complex. So this is I used to be a big collector of the X-Men and lost touch with them. This is after Wanda, the Scarlet Vision, who is both an X-Man and both a mutant and an Avenger. She goes mad the first time in comics, not where she goes mad in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but connected also to do with fake children or imaginary children that she willed into existence but didn't really exist. Anyway, there's a point in the Marvel world where she utters the famous words "No more mutants," and because of her mutant ability to affect reality, she removes all mutant powers from the world, apart from whatever it was, 157 or whatever. There was a few people kept their mutant powers, but and at this point, no new mutant has been born or seen since Wanda pronounced "No more mutants," and a mutant is born. And so this is the Messiah Complex, and the whole world wants to get hold of this mutant, who is the first new mutant in God knows how long, and they're all trying to take control of her and protect her. And I never don't have any other story. So beyond that, I don't know what's going on. But you can see on the cover there, we've got there's Professor Xavier, there's Mr. Sinister, who is coming to the Marvel Universe. We think there's Mystique, Wolverine, of course, and Cyclops. And yeah, looking forward to that. As I say, it's a whole collection of issues: Uncanny X-Men 492 to 494, X-Men 205 207, New X-Men 44 to 46, and X-Factor 25 27. So this was a whole crossover event. And then I've got some early Ed Brubaker, which I'd never read. I've got this deluxe hardback release of Scene of the Crime, which I don't know the story at all. This was a 4 issue, again, these sort of muted, noirish private eye story, I believe, and looking forward to that. That's my mini haul of books, and that's everything. God bless. Bye.